Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of the Starlight Archive.
Oh, yeah.
Today, we are continuing our spoiler-packed series of episodes about Wave 1 of Phase 1 of the High Republic. And Wave 1 started with... It's Wave 1 of Phase 1.
Phase 1 of Wave 1.
No. It's Wave 1 of Phase 1.
Oh my god, yeah, you're right. It's always confused me.
So it's Wave 1 of Phase 1 of the High Republic. It started with The Light of the Jedi, which is Charles Soule's book. If you haven't listened to the other 2 episodes, then you're going to get the quickest version of it. A ship crashed into another ship while it was in hyperspace. Then all the way across the galaxy, things were just flying out. And then, after the Jedi finally stopped all those things from flying all the way out, mostly, they found out that it was actually caused by a group of people on purpose who were called the Nihil. And the Nihil wear masks, and they're not good dudes. But the Jedi eventually figure out that they are actually the ones at fault. And then the Nihil start making themselves a little bit more known, and then they have this big battle. And then the Marshal of Starlight Beacon, who's named Jorah Mali, she ends up not making it through the battle. And that was sad. And Skier, who's a super cool Trandoshan Jedi master, lost his arm. And that is also not cool. Don't worry, though. It does grow back.
Yep.
And that's basically Light of the Jedi. Then in Into the Dark, right around the time that all these things start flying out of hyperspace willy-nilly, the head of the Republic, the Chancellor of the High Republic, is a woman named Lina So, and she's got 2 giant things called Targons, which basically are Arcanines. Yeah. And she says, no more hyperspace travel until we figure this out. So everybody has to ditch hyperspace and get out of the way. And then this crew of the ship called the Vessel, who are carrying some Jedi to Starlight Beacon to go to the dedication ceremony, they wind up having to get stuck at this station called the Amaxine Station. And the Amaxine Station, you might remember it from the Rise of Kylo Ren book. Is it the Rise of Kylo Ren?
Yes.
Or is it a Snoke one-off in Tales of the Resistance?
Yeah.
You may remember it as the former timeshare of one Philip J. Snoke. And they get to the Amaxine Station, and it seems okay, but there's a lot of dark energy there. They're like, hey, the dark side's really strong here, and we're not sure why. Maybe it has to do with those 4 statues. So they take the statues back to Coruscant to, clean them up and make them not evil.
Do?
Yeah, they got to go do their purification thing. They go to purify them, and they're like, oh, no, the dark side wasn't in these at all. The dark side was actually in the Amaxine Station itself. So they take them back to the Amaxine Station. Mind you, they just found out who the Nihil were because they didn't know when they got pulled out of hyperspace in the first place. They find out who the Nihil are. They go back there. Reath Silas is like, hey, Crush, you're a bad lady. And she's like, no, Reath, that's okay. No, I'm not. I'm a bad lady.
Her name's not Crush, though. That's a different character.
No. Her name, no, that's Crash.
Oh, yeah.
But, and not Crush either, the turtle.
Not the turtle.
So Reath confronts his Nihil cute girl he was talking to, and they get back to the station, and they're like, oh no, what have we done? Those statues were actually holding back this ancient evil called the Drangir. Oh, no. And now these weird Biollante Plantzillas are going throughout the galaxy asking people for meat. More or less.
Yeah.
So anyway,
not asking.
They're not asking. They're just eating people. They're just eating lots of people. And then they go to
plant's gonna do what a dark side plant's gonna do.
The plants have access to the Force, and they can put their vines into people's ears, eyeballs, and nostrils and mouths, and anywhere else they choose to, and use that to read minds. At least the ones in the head, anyway.
Yeah.
Ugh. So then the Drangir get released and loosed out across the galaxy, and that's a whole problem. Meanwhile, over in the Star Wars High Republic Adventure comic, a bunch of Padawans make friends with a cute, cool Mickey-an girl named Zine. And she has the Force, but she isn't a Jedi because she was part of this group called the Elders of the Path. Ooh. And the Elders of the Path do not like the Force being used by anybody. And more on that later. So that leads us to another story that is another meanwhile, which is a test of courage, which also happens to happen before the Starlight Beacon dedication ceremony. And it is the final of the 3 novels of Wave 1. Brian, you just reread this entire book.
Yeah.
Take it.
Well, it's funny. With this book, I read it last year instead of when it came out. And I bought the book, and I think I flipped through it a little bit. And I didn't really get a chance to just sit and read it or do the audiobook until last year. So I did everything else, missed Vern's first appearance and all that good stuff, and did the audiobook.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because Vern shows up in the comics.
Yeah, a little bit. So yeah, in fact, I missed that. I missed Race to Crash Point Tower, and then I missed Mission to Disaster.
Wait, you didn't read...
I read all 3 of the young reader books, or did the audiobooks last year.
Wait, Race to Crash Point Tower was...
The one after Valo.
Oh, the one during Valo.
Or during Valo.
More on Valo
More
later.
on that.
Okay.
Later.
That's wave 2.
Yeah.
And then, what's the last one?
Mission to Disaster.
Mission to Disaster. So...
Anyway, so...
I think Lula actually shows up in the High Republic, not the High Republic Adventures.
Lula?
Not Lula. Vern.
Yes,
sorry.
she
Vern with the whip
and
shows
the regular,
up.
Yeah.
She shows up in the fight against the Draengeir.
Yes.
Later.
And then before that, she actually shows up with Imri in like 2 panels as they're doing an autopsy on a hut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then they also have to fight a Draengeir with a Stalimaru.
Yeah. On the Starlight. Yeah. Anyways.
Anyway, that's okay. Woo.
Yeah. So I ended up reading some of these books a little bit later, but going back through and for this episode, I was like, oh, let me take some more notes and read a few things, and then I just basically just reread the entire book.
That's I wouldn't say the entire book, but that is kind of what happened to me while trying to prep for Into the Dark.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remembered most of it, and then I was like, wait, I don't remember that. And then suddenly I'm like, well, 4 chapters later, really I understand what happened.
Keep going. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a few things I sped read through and skipped a few things. I'm like, no, that doesn't look important. That doesn't look important. Ooh, I like this looking chapter. And
side note, you and I listened to Test of Courage together while we were on that last job we did.
Yeah, on the way to work.
Yeah,
we did a big chunk out to Palmdale.
We also did a big chunk trying to get back from that one location that was just awful. I don't remember what it was, but it took forever to get home because we got rerouted away. We had to get back to set.
It was in downtown LA.
Yeah, and we had to get back to set, but like the freeway was closed.
Yeah,
and we were like
all
just
the side streets.
every city street that we could.
Yeah,
yeah, because and I think that's where I dozed off because it was like a long day, and so I ended up not.
We had 2 or 3 locations that day.
Yeah,
that's why we were jumping around.
Yeah, and I ended up not being. I feel like I missed some of this book, so some of this information might be new to me today.
Oh, fun! Well, this will be good.
So, okay, Test of Courage.
Yeah. Justina Ireland wrote it.
Okay.
She's one of the main writers of High Republic going forward, even now. And I
like when she interviews. She's so funny.
Yeah, she's great.
I really enjoy all of, obviously, the authors from the High Republic show with Christina Ariel. But when Justina shows up there, usually she's got her and Claudia Gray both crack me up.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And they all have a good relationship with
Christina Ariel.
Yeah. So it's great. Yeah.
So
starting from the top, we're going through.
Let's go.
We first start out with 2 Nihil. We have Clinith, we have Gwishy, and we don't really know who they are, what they're doing, who they're aligned with, but we know that they're on a kind of a secret mission, and they stole a ship, and they're at Port Hayleap. And Port Hayleap is this, outpost at the edge of the Dalnan sector where the planet Dalna is.
Yeah, and Hayleap comes up a lot. Yes. So if you're planning on going through all of Phase 1, Dalna and Hayleap, remember where they are, remember what they are.
Yeah. And then Dalna shows up a lot in Phase 2. Which is Yeah. So everything's tied together.
Woo! Exciting.
So basically, their mission is to stow aboard the ship and destroy it.
Okay.
No survivors.
Themselves included?
No, they're going to escape.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So their goal is to stow on this ship called the Steady Wing. It's hired by the Republic to bring pretty much everybody from the Dallan sector important-wise. So we got a couple Jedi on there. We have an ambassador and a senator's kid, and we'll get into them later. So they're basically Nihil, come to find out, gasp. The Nihil actually have a stronghold in the Dalnan sector. And Dalnans do not like to space travel because every time they try, the Nihil come up and they board the ship and they pirate, they take the booty, and then they strand them or send them on their way damaged and scared. So
the Dalnans are just stuck.
Yeah. Sometimes they'll make it through and they're not part of the Republic still.
Oh.
So that's why the Republic hasn't really helped out. And Port Hayleap is in the sector, but they're at the far edge of the sector. So there's maybe 5 or 6 Jedi maybe around, and they have their own stuff going on the planet there, and so they don't get a whole lot of help. But also
there is a temple on Dalna.
Yes, a small temple.
Yeah. Do we see that temple in this book?
No.
Oh, okay. I will refrain from talking about that temple.
They do talk about it though,
but the people in the temple and what they have said don't come up.
No. Yeah, so there's a big presence of Nihil before their presence is really felt in the rest of that side of the galaxy.
Yeah. This is one of their outer rim
Outposts,
areas where they're allowed to continue plundering and getting the booty.
And while there is a Jedi temple on Dalna, it's not that manned, and there's no Republic presence either, so they're just kind of there hanging out, helping out. They don't really need to leave the planet. They're there for planet-side problems.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't get word about what's going on with the pirates.
Right. Jedi are not supposed to be the galaxy's police officer.
Right.
And there's a lot of discussion on that after the events of Wave 1, specifically with the Sulistans later. But yeah, so expecting the Jedi to just solve every problem as much as it would be nice if they could. These are Jedi who are like, nah, we kind of just hang out.
Yeah. If we come across them, we'll take care of it. But you guys, you're your own planet. You should be able to help yourself. We'll help you, but you also need to ask. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's it. It's not a for sure thing. That's just conjecture at this point.
Right.
Anywho, so these two Nihil sneak aboard the ship pretty easily. They change...
Clenneth and Gwishy.
Yes.
I love those names.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. But they have mechanics uniforms.
Okay.
So they're easily able to just walk on. No biggie. Whatever. They split up on the ship. One goes to kind of check the area, see... It's a big ship. And they kind of look around, see where they can go. One of them has the plans. He's like, there's a few fun surprises I'm going to leave for him as we're doing this. So they split up, do their own thing. Their point is to make the legacy run look like a day at the fair. Yeah. So this
is that an actual quote?
That's an actual quote.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
That is rough. If you didn't listen to our last two episodes, the legacy run's destruction was awful.
Hence the emergence.
Oh, I mean, also the emergences, but that was just so sad.
Yeah. So I saw that line. I'm like, oh, that's brutal. I got to.
That's mean.
Yeah. But then we move on to the next chapter, and
millions of people died.
Yeah.
Carry on.
And happier news, we meet Vernestra Rwoh, and she is at this point 16 years old, and she is the youngest knighted Jedi in hundreds of years. When she was 15.
15.
So she's been a knight for about 6 to 8 months now. They kind of hinted at it in the book. And she's the former Padawan of one Stellan Gios.
Oh, Stellan Gios.
The man.
What a handsome fella that guy is. Mm-hmm. That line was specifically for you, Rachel of Jakku.
Shout out to the bitches.
Shout out to the bitches of Dathomir. Our favorite other High Republic podcast.
Yeah, go check them out. Anyways, so Vern is a Mary Allen. So she's green-skinned. She's like Luminara from the Clone Wars.
Or Barriss.
Or Barriss.
Who I'm now not as angry at as just a human. I do appreciate her arc in
She had a really good arc in Tales.
I don't forgive her for all the things that she did, but that's not important. Let's move on.
Yeah. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yes.
On our other podcast.
On our podcast.
So she's a really cool Jedi. She's still learning, but she's very gifted. She's strong in the Force. She's pretty wise what she's doing. And she has a purple lightsaber.
Purple lightsabers are cool.
They are. Yeah. So she's excited for her first official mission as a Jedi Knight. The only thing is it's kind of like a babysitting mission.
This happens to Vernestra, as she prefers to be called, more often than it probably should.
Yeah. So her first one is basically a babysitting mission. She's protecting Avon Starros, who is Senator Gira Starros' daughter.
Yes, Gira Starros. You have no idea who Gira Starros is in Wave 1.
But you will.
But you will.
But you will.
She's
great. She's wonderful.
She stands up to the snooty rich man, and that was good. That is some good stuff. Yeah. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. So, Vernestra doesn't really like the idea of babysitting. She's really excited that, hey, I have my first mission as a Jedi. So I'm thankful for that. I'm going to make the best out of it that I can. So
that's a very Jedi approach to that Jedi. No small parts, only small actors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she's basically been on this mission for about a month or so.
She's been babysitting this girl for a month?
Yeah. With all the little hints that we've gotten throughout the book. It's been about a month.
Oh, this poor woman. Avon is a handful.
So she's a handful.
This poor young lady.
Yeah, we find out that Avon is kind of a kid genius. Mechanical, engineering.
So she's Kevin McAllister.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And she has a nanny droid that's with her who's pretty sassy. And the nanny droid J6 is also a reprogrammed protector droid, security droid.
I love J6.
Oh, she's the best.
In our spoiler-free episode, I definitely raved about J6, but like I love J6. Like J6, if J6 gets enough time and gets to get into phase 3, J6 may enter the top 5 droids for me. Because like she's like if Mary Poppins and HK-47.
Oh my god, that is genius. That is it.
Oh, so good. Meat bag.
So sassy, but like very protective. Knows
perfectly programmed in every way.
Yeah. But also Avon upgrades her personality, and she also reprograms her to be more autonomous.
Yeah.
So then she kind of learns a little bit more on her own. So she becomes more sassy as it. Yeah. Great.
So good.
We love J6.
So good. J6 is so good.
Yeah. So it's Avon and J6. And we learn later on in the book that Avon was actually kidnapped as a kid.
Oh.
Or I guess a couple years before that. And her mom's like, cool. Well, instead of staying on the planet.
Oh, Hosnian Prime.
Hosnian Prime. That's right. Yeah.
The big one.
Yeah. So Avon is from Hosnian Prime, which is a great callback to the sequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And while she was at home, she disengaged the security perimeter so she can go out and just explore what's around. And because she was so young, she didn't realize why there was a security gate around, and she got kidnapped. So she eventually got rescued. Her uncles took care of the kidnappers.
Oh.
Yeah. And then Gira Staros.
So she's from that family.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. So Gira Staros, her mom's like, cool, you're hanging out with me for the time being. So she...
They woke up with a fall to your head in their bed.
Yeah.
Made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Right. Exactly.
I took care of it.
We took care of it.
Okay. Anyway, sorry.
So she pals around Coruscant for a little while, and she's like, I hate this. Like, I don't like being here with these people and these senators and all this political stuff.
It's stuffy.
And she's kind of like, I want to go explore. I want to go do shenanigans.
Yeah, who wants to be in Floridia for Life Day?
Yeah, no. I do. I'll be there. So she talks her mom basically into, like, as Avon puts it, exiling herself.
Oh, jeez.
And so, yeah, but the whole time it's like, I was sent out here because my mom hates me. And it's just like, no, kid, that's... You even admitted later on it's your idea. And the characters have a good conversation about that. Anyway, so that kind of leads Avon to be out in the Port Haley area, and she's kind of out exploring the galaxy at this point and learning what's going on out there, and Vernestra is charged with protecting her. So they end up out at Port Haley, and they hang out at the Jedi Temple over there, the very small Jedi outpost, and that's headed up by Douglas Sunvale.
Douglas Sunvale.
And then we have his awesome Padawan, Imri Kenteros.
I know we get normal names once in a while, like Luke and Ben, but seeing the name Douglas, I was just like, oh.
There's only one S, so it's fine.
Is there normally two?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Google it.
I am going to Google it. I'm Googling.
Do it, bro.
Hey, Liz Lemon, you mind if I Google myself in your office? Sure, I Google myself all the time. Yeah, both are acceptable.
Yeah. Okay.
One S or two S's.
That was the first time I saw one S. I'm like, oh, okay, Star Wars.
Frederick Douglass had two S's. And two fists for fighting. No, yeah, as a first name, I think one S is fairly standard. And I would know because I see thousands of names a year. I hate my job.
Douglai?
I don't know.
Douglas is
not many. It's not a common name now. Anyway, okay, sorry. Douglas.
Yeah, so we have Douglas and Imri.
Imri.
Yep. So that's where we first get introduced to Imri as well. And he is his Padawan. And he's been around for a little while, but he's getting a little bit older and he's getting really close to his Jedi trials.
Okay. This is Imri Kenteros.
Yes.
Sorry for the derailing on Douglas.
Yeah, no. Good. So Vern ends up hanging out with them, and she becomes really good friends with both Imri and Master Douglas.
Oh, cool.
And he kind of teaches her a few things. He's like, hey, like, you really are worthy of being a Jedi Knight. But also don't forget that like you're still learning. You can always learn new things. I'm still learning new things. My Padawan teaches me new things. So, be open to just keep learning.
Yeah.
And so
don't be like a regular gifted kid and get burnt out before you turn, 16.
So Vern's hanging out with him.
Wait, if you don't mind me asking, what are Master Douglas and Imri doing there?
Master Douglas is in charge of the Jedi outpost.
Oh.
Yeah. At Port Hayleap.
Oh, at Port Hayleap.
Yes.
Got it.
No,
okay.
no. They're out there just kind of helping out when and where they can, but it's also pretty far out of the Republic. And so they're just kind of a nice outpost to be like, hey, we're from the Republic and we're happy and helpful and we like to help you. But also if you guys want to join the Republic, that'd be cool too. So you can also be helped in a bigger way.
Yeah.
So they're kind of smoothing the area out.
Gotcha.
To hopefully set up for a
front loading this Republic idea.
Basically, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And what's also cool about this too is Vernestra is rocking her Jedi robes, and at this time, different Jedi temples have different little insignias of the area that they're from.
Okay.
That they're training at. So she has her own little insignia. We don't really get a good description of it.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. But her and Stellan have it.
Okay.
Because he trained her at...
Kind of like the Master Roshi gi.
Yeah, exactly.
Turtle School gi, if rather.
Yeah, so she's rocking the Hynestian Jedi Temple little insignia, and Douglas has his own, but we didn't really get a good description of where.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really cool that the Jedi can be a little more individual.
One of the things I'm raising my hand. One of the things that defines a Hynestian temple robe is the pattern of gold that details the robe. So just like the gold accents are kind of the thing.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Which you can actually kind of see in the live action version of Vernestra. So Vern's got her cool robes that she's rocking, and it doesn't really come up too much, but it's very interesting that the Jedi Council and the Jedi at large are allowing the Jedi at these temples to kind of give themselves a nice little individualized look.
But also, when you're that spread thin across the entire galaxy, can you really police their dress code?
Yeah.
Like, can you really dress code the kid that's on the edge of the field? Right. Like, listen, Vern's going to wear a crop top. That's all there is to it, you know?
But also...
Stellan's wearing baggy pants.
Yeah, and it's kind of mentioned, too, that Douglas usually wears a normal... I say normal. Typically, whatever the normal people, the civilians of Port Hayleap wear, because the weather is just kind of doesn't play nice with the Jedi robes. But also, the best way to make friends with people on Port Hayleap is to be part of Port Hayleap. So why stick yourself out, besides your lightsaber, if you're, walking around in these super fancy robes that are like, bro, it's hot. What are you doing wearing those?
Yeah, especially if you're wearing something like a Hynestian robe with the gold trim.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also like their traveling robes and their, dare I say, adventure robes, like the kind of more brown, durable.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're off going to go do some stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, I liken it to Boy Scouts. Like, we had our Class A uniform, and that's the one with all the patches and the pins and the buttons. And then we had our Class B. And Class B was you're wearing, like, the T-shirt that's, like, your activity uniform is sometimes what they call it.
Oh, okay,
and then sometimes we had, like, Class C, where it was, like, we want you still wearing Scout-affiliated things so that we can still spot you in a crowd. Mm-hmm. But it could be, like, from a summer camp or something like that.
Got it.
That kind of thing. So I feel like Jedi in this era also have like, this is your formal wear that's like, that's where you have your troop patch, also known as whatever the temple you're from insignia. But then you also have your utility, your field uniform,
dress.
Field dress. I think is actually what they use it now. They stopped using Class B after I finished Scouts, but you're like field uniform versus your
dress
uniform. Yeah, that kind of thing. So it's interesting that he's like not even wearing the field uniform. Mm-hmm. He's just like, nah, I just dress like locals.
Yeah. And he gets them to trust him, and
certainly takes the divide off a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So Vernestra's sitting outside this ship, getting ready to board. That the Nihil just also walked up, and she's kind of contemplating life. Again, it sucks being on a babysitting mission, but also I'm on a mission. That's awesome. And all of a sudden you hear this noise behind her, or she hears this noise behind her, and Avon zooms by on a speeder that she made herself, because kid genius. So she uses the Force, stops her. They get in a little tiny argument, And at this point, Vernestra very much is playing the babysitter role, and she's trying to keep her out of trouble and keep her safe. And Avon's like, just let me do it. You know, whiny little kid status.
I don't know that Avon's actually that whiny, though.
No.
But she does wear on you.
Yeah. So she tells Vernestra, she's like, when I'm a great inventor, I'm going to invent something to stop the Force. And it's like, ooh, okay. And Vernestra's like, dude, it's impossible to block the Force. It's all around us and it's in us, which that whole exchange is kind of foreshadowing for just things in general going on later. So it's kind of funny, but kind of serious, but also like, ooh. So again, Avon's a kid genius. She put together the speeder with spare parts that were just laying around in the couple of days or weeks that she was just hanging out on Port Hayleap.
You know, like you do.
As you do. But one of her big interests are crystals.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So she keeps bugging Vern to be like, hey, let me see your lightsaber. How does it work? What's that kyber crystal all up in there? And Vern's like, chill, don't know. This is mine. It's too special. You can't have this. Don't touch it. So of course that makes her want it even more. And this is going on and off for weeks that she's been basically babysitting her.
Right.
At this point, they're getting onto the ship because their mission is loose. They're going to Starlight Beacon for a couple of days.
What? They're all going to Starlight Beacon?
Yeah.
For what? Like some dedication ceremony that hasn't happened
like
again?
That, you know? I don't know. Yeah. So they're going to Starlight Beacon for the dedication ceremony. And then afterwards, they're going to go back to Coruscant and visit her mom and hang out there for a little bit. And then they're just going to go back out and about. And so that's kind of what kicks off this whole thing. Vernestra wasn't necessarily supposed to go to the Starlight Beacon or to Coruscant, but Master Douglas asked her to go because there's a senator's kid that's coming with him, Honesty Weft, who's from...
Is he a senator's kid or is he the ambassador's
kid? Oh, he's
kid?
the ambassador kid. So Honesty, he's the ambassador from Dalna's son.
Got it. Honesty Weft.
Yes, Honesty Weft. He pretty much got talked into going and / forced into going. And during this time on Dalna, during the teenage years, you're going through this kind of class, kind of coming of age ceremony called the Metamorphosis, where you basically figure out how to live on Dalna away from parents and maybe a little bit of civilization. The world is a very, I guess, uncivilized planet. There's a lot of little villages around and not a lot of big cities.
Plus all the ice skaters.
Yeah, right. So anyways, Metamorphosis is this, again, coming of age trial classes thing that the Dalnan people do. And they also kind of specialized in certain areas. And so he took survival classes and combat classes. That'll come up later. So they all make their way onto the ship, and they actually walk by one of the Nihil. And Vernestra gets kind of a weird, bad feeling about it. But she couldn't tell if that's just nerves from it being her first mission and she's still on it. And she's going back to see the Jedi, and she's excited to do that and see this huge Starlight Beacon that's been talked about for years at this point. So she kind of ignores it, but kind of like stows at the back of her head like, maybe I'll figure it out later. Maybe it's just nerves and excitement. And after she sees the Nihil and they're walking on, Avon bugs Vernestra to see the Kyber Crystal and her lightsaber again. And Vernestra has a really cool quote, and it's, "A Jedi and her crystal are linked through the Force. It sings to me and my spirit returns the call."
Ooh, my spirit returns the call. That's sweet.
Right? I was
Love
like,
that.
oh, I gotta write that one down. So it's really cool that we get all these little lore pieces of the Jedi and of their lightsabers and the crystals. And I think that's what really got me into deep diving and rereading the book again, because it's kind of filled with all these all over the place. And I remember when we were driving around and listening to the book, it would come up and I'd be like, ooh, that's
drop a little
really
nugget here
cool.
and there.
Yeah. So Vernestra's walking onto the ship after telling Avon, like, no, you can't have my lightsaber. What are you doing? Get out of here.
Yeah.
And she's kind of thinking about the journey ahead. And at this point, the emergencies have happened and hyperlanes are shut down.
Oh, joy.
Yeah. But by this point in the entire story of the first book,
yep, Light of the
Jedi, hyperlanes started opening back up a little bit, and they started figuring out what's been going on.
So we're around the point in Into the Dark where the vessel and the Jedi are all on their way back to Coruscant.
Yeah.
With the statues.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
We're about there. Okay. So we're still not to the dedication ceremony yet.
Nope, not yet. Yeah. So it sounds like they're going to be taking a few hyperlanes, but also leaving the hyperlanes to travel sublight for a little bit. So again, they're not going hyperspace the entire time, but it's starting to open back up. And this will come into play a little bit later. So they all get settled and they start to meet for dinner as the ship is taken off. And we finally meet Master Douglas and Imri in person. And
so this hall has been over holo messages, these conversations?
Yeah, basically it's either holo conversations or it's just kind of revealed later in the book.
Okay.
But it just makes more sense to include them right now.
Got it.
Beforehand. Nice little build-up of the character. So we finally meet Master Douglas and Imri, and they actually show up instead of just Vern thinking about them and what they've talked about and their friendship and all that, which has been great. But we finally get to meet them, and Douglas is already on the ship, and so they're already set up. Vern was waiting for Avon to come back from her shenaniganizing, and Vern comes up to Douglas, and she's like, hey, she keeps calling me Vern. You're the only one that calls me Vern. She learned that from you. Dude, what the crap? And he just kind of like laughs it off. And again, Douglas is the only one that calls her Vern. But now we do too.
Nice.
Yeah, so it kind of works. So as they're at dinner, Douglas introduces Vernestra to the Dahlin delegation. They also meet Honesty and his dad and a few of the other delegates that are with them. And Avon is, of course, late. But she eventually rolls in and pretty much takes control of the whole thing. She switches. And she is super attentive and very almost regal.
She turns on her senator's daughter.
She turns on her senator, yes. Her senator's voice.
Yeah.
And this completely surprises Vernestra. She's like, oh, she does have that side. Okay, cool. And then it's kind of revealed that the ship that they're on, the
Steady Wing.
The Steady Wing, was actually hired by Avon's mom.
Gira,
yeah. To basically bring everybody in, but also like, hey, here's what we have with the Republic. We have some nice things, but also we feel you're important enough to send this really expensive big thing out here to bring you guys in. And we respect you and we want you here.
Okay, so this is a political play by Gira to be like, hey, Mr. Weft, we want you coming, not weaving.
Yeah.
Get it?
Mm-hmm.
Weft. We want you on the white side of the galaxy, not the weft side.
Yeah, so then as this is all going on, they're all schmoozing and talking, and one of the delegation asks Vernestra about the Jedi trials and like how that is, what do they test? They don't go into specifics, sadly, but it's basically Vernestra's like, oh, it's both the test of strength and intellect, as well as strengths and weaknesses within the Jedi and the powers that they have, and all that good stuff. And then one of the Dahlin ambassadors is like, oh, that sounds like the metamorphosis tests that we do.
Yeah.
And Imri pipes in, and he's like, well, yes and no. Like, you guys do more just kind of a general class, but then you guys have specific classes that you can choose, and the Jedi don't necessarily operate that way. We're testing on anything and everything, and then also every Jedi is different. So each one has a different strength, each Jedi has a different weakness, and those come into play as the tests are going on, unlike the metamorphosis.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a cool way to further explain the trials.
Yeah, and it's not really mentioned outright, I know, in this book, but like to become a Padawan, initiates also have to go through trials.
Yeah, and if they don't make it...
Like Stellan and Elzar kind of cheated on theirs.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And then there was like a lightsaber duel aspect of it that like Dooku and Sifo Dyas, like they had to do their fight in order to get chosen by their respective masters.
Yeah.
And most of the big testy type things you got to do to be a Jedi, I feel like kind of happen before you've become a proper Padawan. And then your master basically goes, look, they're ready and they're going to prove it to you with a couple of little skills, but they don't have to show you everything. Trust me, I'm a master.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And sometimes they don't even do the trials. They're just out and about on a mission and like stuff goes wrong and then they get themselves out of it.
Yeah. I mean, we're bringing it back to Boy Scouts again, but it's effectively like you can either do your Eagle project or you can get caught up in a major situation where you have to basically do everything that you've been trained for, where they go, well, you basically did an Eagle project here.
Yeah.
Except obviously that doesn't typically happen with Eagle as far as I know. But with the Jedi, like if you're out and suddenly you're stopping an emergence or something, like everything that Lula did on Trimant 4, had she been further along in her training, I feel like I mean, shoot, that happened to Keith Trennis. They're like, hey, go up the aggro crag and go pull out the pendant and then give it to Almec or whatever. And I'm mixing up my Nickelodeon shows, but I did it on purpose, so fight me. But you go do that, and then when everything goes awry, but she still manages to save an entire town, they're like, you're good.
You're good. Yeah,
you're fine.
I mean, same thing happened with Obi-Wan. He was going to go do his trials, but instead he fought a Sith Lord.
Yeah. You fought a Sith Lord. You did okay. You chopped that boy right in half.
You never came back from that.
You did the spicy version of that trial.
Super spicy.
Yeah, and it's not like he's going to come back.
Right. No.
Always two there are. And by two, we mean parts of Darth Maul.
Right. So,
I was like, this went way off the rails. Anyway. So they're kind of having their nice fun. It sounds to me like the joy of this book really is in the discussions of the Force and the Order.
Which I'm all about. I love the lore and all that kind of stuff. So give me more. I think that's why I dove in so much again.
Yeah.
So they're eating dinner, they're hanging out, and all of a sudden, all the Jedi feel a disturbance in the Force. And then a boom, and then another boom, and then a crash, and some scrapes. And they're like, what? So they all try to go out and see what's going on. Meanwhile, it's chaos outside. Again, this is a huge ship.
You know who likes chaos?
No, who?
Clenneth and Gwishy.
What?
Because they're nihil.
Yep, they sure are.
These must be the surprises they were leaving for them.
They sure are.
Dang it, man. Yeah. I thought for sure everything was going to go so smooth on this ship.
I thought they were just going to make them some, like, decent brownies or cook them a nice dinner or something. I like those nice
classic Gwishy. Just really changing it up.
Yeah.
You think you know the guy. He's just such a scamp.
Yeah. I think Gwishy might be the female.
Damn.
Anyways.
Classic Gwishy. What a scamp. Always something up their sleeve.
Yeah. So anyways, they're all trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, there's more explosions. There's pieces of the ship that's falling apart.
Are they in hyperspace?
No, right now they're actually just going through sublight in the Dolan sector, trying to get to the hyperspace lane.
Oh, okay. Because you got to enter hyperspace in the right space.
Yeah. So you don't hit any, supernovas or asteroid fields and, all that stuff Han talked about.
Yeah.
So there's pieces of the ship falling, and the kids are up front almost, and the adults are in the back. And a huge bulkhead falls. Master Douglas force pushes all the kids ahead and is basically like, try to find a way out. We're going to try to find something over here. But Vern's thinking and knows through the Force, like, this isn't a good thing. We all got separated. They're not doing well back there. The ship's blowing up even more so behind them. So
they don't probably have a way out.
Yeah. So they end up finding out that a lot of the escape pods are sabotaged.
Gwishy.
More surprises. And they eventually find a mechanics shuttle that somehow got missed.
Interesting. Yeah. The mechanics?
Mm-hmm.
The ones who dressed as mechanics have a mechanic shuttle that they didn't...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they all get onto there, and they leave as the ship is just blowing up even more.
So Imri is watching the ship that his master is on blow up.
Yeah.
Douglas is gone.
Yeah.
Honesty's dad is gone.
And as they leave, the entire ship just all just goes. Instead of little tiny explosions, there's now one big explosion, and the Jedi feel Master Douglas go in the Force.
Oh.
It was brutal.
The only one who can call her Vern.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that she had such a good relationship with Master Douglas.
Yeah, they really played it up in the book as I think she knew him a little bit beforehand, but once she was stationed on Port Hayleap with them, they did the normal meditations together. They've
been hanging out for the last month.
Yeah. And Douglas really saw how special she was and talked her up as also like, hey, if you need anything, you're still 16.
He's basically been her counsel.
Yeah.
For how do you...
Almost a second master.
How do you Jedi Knight?
Yeah.
You're already a knight. You're not a Padawan anymore, so I can't, order you around and ask you to do stuff. But, when you have problems...
Yeah, I'm your guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. That's a cool. Yeah, he's your mentor.
Yeah, and after reading the book and all the callbacks to him even later on when they're thinking about him and stuff, I'm like, now I really want a Douglas book.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, at least a comic, one shot, give me something.
Yeah.
But again, because I'm all into the lore, I'm like, what's going on at that temple? What does it look like? What is the outpost?
How do they dress?
Yeah, and there's a library that's in the temple.
I love a good archive.
Mm-hmm.
As you might have gathered.
Yeah.
So they crash their ship. So they're taking their shuttle down.
Mm-hmm.
Do they land it?
Yes.
Or do they crash it?
They land. A little bit of both. As they're flying out of now this junkyard in space, because the ship's blowing up around them, and there's pieces flying at the ship, the Jedi have to use the Force to basically protect themselves because the ship doesn't have shields. And
so they're force pushing debris from the ship. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime Anakin did that in Clone Wars about like various like scrapper droids and stuff, and he'd just be like, "No, stop."
Yeah. And so, at this point, the Jedi are doing that, and Honesty is just in complete shock because his dad's gone, and the delegation is gone. But also, the last conversation he had with his dad, he's like, why am I here? I should be on the planet doing the metamorphosis. I don't need to be doing this nonsense. What the heck? And so, it wasn't a happy conversation, and that was the last one he had.
And wasn't his dad kind of alluding that maybe staying on Dalna wasn't what Honesty needed?
Yeah.
Like his dad was kind of pushing this, like, listen, I get that the metamorphosis and all the aspects of Dalna being self-reliant are important, and they're important to us, but there's also a much bigger galaxy because he's trying to join the Republic.
Yes, yeah.
So Honesty this isn't just like I don't want to be here, but this is like a clash of values that they're having.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't see the need, because he hasn't seen the rest of the galaxy.
He hasn't seen anything.
Okay.
He's still a kid. He's 14, I think.
Oh, yeah. That definitely is when you're smart enough to know you have opinions and dumb enough to not realize how wrong they are.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah. So they eventually get out of this debris field, and they're flying around, and they're like, we don't know where we are. Navigation's kind of shot, but we'll just kind of relax for a second and just kind of breathe. And it's at this point where Honesty and Imri are like, oh my god, we basically lost our fathers. Yeah. And Honesty's like, yeah, wasn't your master like your father?
Trauma bonding.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. That's when Imri's like, oh my god, he really was basically like my father. I didn't even think about it like that.
Thanks for making this way harder, Honesty.
Yeah. So Vern goes and, checks on both of them, make sure they're all right, but she lets them grieve, which is very important, and she consoles them, but, she doesn't tell them the usual Jedi doctrine of like, oh, don't feel the negative things, just meditate it away, it'll be fine.
Yeah, they're one with the Force, you should be happy about that.
Yeah, and she mentioned that in the book, which is really cool. Like, normally you're not supposed to feel these things, so you should meditate them away. And it's like, that's not how things work, and she knows that's not how things work, so she's like, you need to grieve. I'm going to let you do what you need to do. I'm going to go back to the front and see where we are.
Yeah. And so she left them be.
Yeah. But eventually they're like, hey, we're running low on fuel and oxygen, and we don't have shields.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. And so J6, being J6, is like, we should find a habitable planet. It's like, well, yeah, we should. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank you for thinking clearly, J6.
Yeah. And, they mentioned like, hey, we didn't jump into hyperspace, so we're still in the system. J6, is there any planets or moons that have life on them and they're habitable? So she runs through. She's like, well, there's a couple that I can think of, but like, I don't know where we are. I don't really have the star chart, so I can't see where we're at. So yes, but I don't know where.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay. And Imri is like, hey, what if I try using this wayfinding technique that Douglas taught me? And Vernestra's like, well, I'm not going to tell him no, because his master just died, but usually that technique is done by, like, big Jedi masters who've been studying the Force for, like, decades, and not a Padawan. But she's like, you know what? You do you, kid. Let me know what you find. I'll help out if you need to. And so he reaches out with the Force, and he tries to find a planet that has a lot of life, or animals and plants and stuff.
Who's doing this?
Imri.
Imri's doing this?
Yeah.
Wee little Imri?
Yeah, because Douglas taught him. Because Douglas was like, yeah, I'll teach you this one thing. And Vern helps out a little bit, but there's just too much going on and everybody's so exhausted.
He's a regular Elzar man, that Imri.
Yeah, everybody's too exhausted and they need to rest up before they, use the Force anymore. Because again, they've been using the Force ever since they left the ship, from helping clear the debris, helping force speed and jump through whatever's falling apart on the ship, and just all the emotional...
They're
force.
shot.
Yeah, they're shot. So they're like, hey, tell you what, let's just take a nap. We're okay for, the next, day or so. Let's all just breathe. And Avon brings us up. She's like, taking some time for yourself will help you think better after an emotionally charged day. And it's like, oh, you are kind of smart. And they bring it up too that Avon's family don't like to talk. And when things go wrong, or if somebody in the family dies, they'll talk about it for an hour. They might have a nice dinner and then they move on. But everybody's obviously still grieving and still going through stuff, but they won't talk about it.
So Avon understands. Yeah, super healthy. Totally.
Yeah.
So Avon gets the problems with the Jedi that Vern is also kind of acknowledging.
And a lot of this was instructed by J6 when Avon was growing up, because J6 is the nanny droid. And so she recognizes when people are in distress. It's like, here's what you need to get through this distressing situation, which includes mental health help and
that's cool.
Self-care and all. Yeah. And so Avon's like, I learned these things from my droid. My family doesn't do them, but I know they work. But don't tell my family.
Oh my God. Yeah, there's a line in the King's speech where Colin Firth says, "We're not a family, we're a firm." And very much that vibe with the Staros clan. Yeah. Like, they are just an organization. Mm-hmm. They're a clan.
Right.
Like, they even call, like, they are the Staros clan. Like, they're not just a family.
Yeah.
Family.
Some of that comes up in the Sana Staros' solo miniseries.
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned that, but Avon Staros has a distant relative that's in the Skywalker saga era of comics named Sana Staros, who may or may not have one time sort of kind of married Han Solo for a hot second.
Yeah, that was a fun arc. So anyways, smash and cut back to the High Republic era.
Oh, yeah.
They rest a little bit, and Imri's sitting, thinking, and starts meditating and reaching out with the Force, and he actually does start to feel life on a distant planet.
Hey!
It's close. Yeah. And so he tells Vern. Yeah. So he tells Vernestra, he's like, hey, I'm pretty sure I feel something, but help me out. And they end up finding this jungle moon that ends up turning out to be called Rwoh. So they end up flying the shuttle there. At this point, again, fuel's pretty much running out, oxygen's running low, but the planet can sustain them for a little bit while they figure out how to call for help. Because again, their navigation's kind of shot, and there's no radio on board. So as they're traveling to this moon, Avon is still thinking about kyber crystals and crystals in general, but also if she befriends these Jedi enough to let her check out their lightsaber and crystals, she could use that research to get into the University of Coruscant, which is one of her big goals.
Got it. She really is a senator's child.
Mm-hmm. And so she's thinking about all this stuff. Then Vernestra's like, oh, hey, we're getting close. We think it's a moon, but we're getting close and we should be okay. And also with all this thinking, Avon's like, hey, I don't think that was an accident. I think something blew up the ship.
Oh, Avon's on the level.
Yeah. And Vernestra's like, I'm kind of feeling that way too, but we don't want to say anything just yet because the boys are still going through some stuff and we don't want to pack on more.
Yeah, maybe.
But I think we're on to something.
Yeah, maybe Clyneth and Gwishy were actually the Masky Bandits.
Mm-hmm. And they're sitting there talking, and Avon's like, no, we need vengeance on these guys. And Vernestra's like,
whoa.
Well, let's not quite the Jedi way. Let's...
Jeez.
It kind of escalated quickly, but they're like, hey, and at this point, Imri's in there too. And he's like, no, it's not quite the Jedi way. But he's also like, no, but maybe we do need to do something. Well, that's not the Jedi way. But something.
But justice has to happen.
Yeah.
Like, there should be some sort of righting of this wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right. So they eventually land on the planet, and it's got acid rain.
Lovely.
Which they'll find later. Yeah.
It's got cool monkeys.
It's got cool monkeys, which we'll find later. They land on the planet, figure out that the air is breathable.
Nice.
And they go out to explore a little bit just to see what the surroundings are. And at this point...
But it's like a rainforest jungle, so acid rain is common and frequent. Yes?
Only at night.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So they just have to make sure they have shelter by night.
Exactly.
Which is a smart idea anyway.
Yeah, totally.
No sleeping under the stars, though.
No. So they eventually kind of spread out a little bit, and Vernestra goes with Imri and asks if he's all right, and he's feeling sad and lost, angry and upset, but downplays everything because, again, these aren't Jedi-type feelings, so we can't feel these
I'm not
ways.
supposed to be that attached that his death should affect me this way.
Right. With those feelings, it's just like, oh, that's kind of the general Jedi thing, and that kind of helps escalate their downfall, which we see in the Skywalker saga.
Yes.
Because everything kind of comes back to that.
Right. It was the point when the Force was finally balanced. Yeah. So.
At this point, they're going through the jungle, and...
Run through the jungle.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And the Jedi are using their lightsabers, and there's just so much brush that it's hard chopping them through and then walking through. And Vernestra's like, maybe I should bust out my my light whip. And this is the first indication that Vernestra
has already tweaked her lightsaber.
Yeah.
So we don't actually get to see her figure that out.
No. So this actually, she thinks about it later and talks about it with Imri a little bit later and a little bit here. But she woke up in a start one night. She said weeks ago. So I'm guessing 3 to 4 weeks before this point. And then later on, too, she also mentions she's been on her mission for a month. So sometime in between the explosion on the ship here and landing on the planet and her getting the mission and being on Port Hayleap, she's on Port Hayleap and awakes in a start. And the Force is basically telling her to tweak her lightsaber and make it into a light whip. So she did that, didn't tell anybody, because she's like, no one's really done this kind of thing in hundreds, if not a couple thousand of years.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know how the Jedi are going to take it, especially Stellan. But she thinks he'd be okay with it, but she also didn't want to, like, push it.
She's like, Stellan's cool. He's really cool. But he also is very much a stickler for the rules and looking appropriate in the eyes of the council.
Exactly. Yeah.
More on that later.
So she keeps it on the down low. And at this point, she's like, hey, I'm going to do a thing. And she twists the top of her lightsaber, and it turns into a light whip, and she's able to cut through the brush way quicker because it's a whip, and it's cutting through everything.
I'm sure Avon's losing. Well, is Avon there?
No. At this point, they're kind of split up a little bit. They're a little bit further ahead.
Got it.
And Imri's like, whoa, dude, that is insane.
Wizard, one might say.
Yeah. And it's cool because she, looking into it, she realized that the Jedi used this against the Sith and their forbidden forms, lightsaber forms. And it helped them during the Sith Wars. But also the Night Sisters used light whips as well.
I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Super cool.
That is rad. So that's part of it's part of the forbidden form to fight with the light whip this way.
No. They used the light whip to fight the Sith who used forbidden lightsaber forms.
It
was kind of their one up to whatever.
Because the Sith were using lightsaber forms
tricks
that are beyond Vapod in the relishing of anger.
Yeah.
Or the relishing the joy of battle, I guess is the better phrase.
Yeah.
Excitement of battle?
Yeah.
Mace Windu uses Vipod, and I think that's about as close to the Forbidden Forms as you could probably get.
And I don't know if this is current canon or old canon, but he created that form.
Oh.
Based off of 2 other forms.
Fascinating.
Yeah. We'll look into it later. Anyways, they're chopping through the forest, just trying to get a nice lay of the land, and they find a cave. And it's pretty empty, but it's also a safe spot to sit and relax and just mellow out.
Chill spot to chill for the night.
Yes.
But where are they going? Why are they walking away from their ship?
They went out to find tall trees to climb just to get a better look of the area. And they found a couple that were kind of a little bit off in the distance. They'd walk to there, climb the trees, and just see if they can find either civilization or anything. Yeah. While they were resting, Imri meditated, and his master beforehand, Douglas always said, hey, if you have a problem that you can't fix, or if you're in a situation, or if you need to just center your mind, just meditate.
Yeah.
And so he's like, cool, I'm going to do what my master told me to do. But at this point, he's still very angry and upset, and he really can't focus.
Which makes meditation a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even meditating made him think of his master.
Sure.
Yeah. And so...
What, doing the thing that your master told you to do to handle your emotions reminded you of your master?
Yeah, right? Who knew? So his thoughts ended up going towards Vernestra's lightsaber and light whip. And he was a little iffy on it because, again, it was so far away of what the Jedi were currently teaching. But he was also like, well, if the Force told her to do that, why isn't the Force telling me to do
cool things?
Cool things, yeah. I want to be a cool guy and do some really cool stuff. Why isn't the Force talking to me? So he was kind of thinking about that and just kind of sitting in his emotions. And he's just feeling very unbalanced, which got brought up quite a few times in the book, which is really cool. And he kind of figured out that he was also kind of jealous because, again, the Force isn't talking to him like it was talking to Vernestra.
Right.
And this kind of caught him off guard as well. But in the archives on Port Hayleap, he studied and looked into a couple different Force groups, not necessarily the Jedi or the Sith, but they talked about the Night Sisters and the Guardians of Yavin and other races and cults who found something of value in the chaotic, destructive side of the Force. But he'd never heard of a Jedi in the modern times going to the dark side, which also kind of confused him as well because he's feeling these dark side-ish thoughts, but he's feeling so imbalanced, but like, surely other Jedi have felt the same things.
The pull.
Yeah. But again, he'd never heard of anybody actually turning to the dark side.
Yeah. He's definitely that sort of character that like overthinks and is a little bit coded in that atypical brain. Mm-hmm. That's definitely a thing. I feel like that Justina Ireland's kind of putting on this character of this idea that when you're not entirely sure how you're supposed to be, you worry about all the ways you're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so like, you're like, is this me turning to the dark side? Yeah. Gestures into the air at the imaginary butterfly.
Right.
But like, you're like, oh, I haven't gotten the call of the Force and I'm jealous and I'm upset. Am I going to be a Sith? Like catastrophizing a little bit.
Yeah. But even, on the same token, he mentions that he found the dark side unsettling, but not terrifying. So he knew everything requires balance. And that's kind of drilled into the Padawans. Balance. Everything's in balance.
Perfectly
Everything needs
balanced,
to be in balance. You
as
need to
all
be in
things
balance.
should be.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that the Padawans are taught about balance, but once you get older and become a Jedi and a master, it's all light side.
Yeah.
No balance. But it's balanced, but you're definitely way light side.
Yeah.
And you're taught to basically be afraid of these negative feelings.
Right.
That are very natural.
Because they're natural and you're supposed to accept them and then push them away.
Yeah.
Or let them fly past as it were, using more mindfulness terminology. But I don't think they stress enough the difference between feel the feeling, let it pass, and shove it down. Like it's like the song in the Book of Mormon, turn it off. Like a light switch, go click, like they're just like, yeah, no, just take that negative feeling and crush it.
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah. So it's kind of interesting, like having the younger Jedi talk about balance and feeling these feelings and acknowledging they're feeling these feelings, and they know they shouldn't be, but they're like, it's hard not to. Like, what else am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Whereas all the older Jedi are like, don't feel those feelings. What are you talking about? No, don't have those feelings.
And if you're not comfortable feeling the feeling and let it pass, of course the dark side is like scary.
Yeah.
But when you have that balance, you're like, oh, that's a little, I don't like that. Mm-hmm. That's like as much as he feels about the dark side. And he's watching these adults like be like, oh no, the dark side.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, it gives me the ick, but that's about
I'm not
it.
scared of it.
Yeah. It's out of the mouth of babes. Yeah. The wisdom of children. Mm-hmm. And the children are our future.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So he's now at the point where like, well, meditation ain't working. This passive meditation ain't working. What if I do something active? So he decides to take apart and clean his lightsaber, and it's been kind of wonky for the last couple weeks, and he's been taking it apart and talked about it with Vern a little bit beforehand. And it's just, it's powering on, and the blade's there, but the blade's a little bit weak, and it's not as blue.
Oh, dude, you just got to change the battery pack.
Yeah, that's it.
Or at the very least, take it over to Disneyland and see if they've got like a, new emitter for you.
That reminds me, I got to do that. Anyways. So he's taken apart his lightsaber and put it back together, and it still feels off to him. And again, it worked, but it's unsteady. The blade's kind of weak. And Avon eventually woke up and came up to him and asked to watch because she's fascinated by lightsabers. And
oh boy!
And at this point, she definitely has an end goal, but she's not being malicious about it. she has a general interest.
Yeah.
And
Avon's a good kid.
She's a good kid. Yeah.
Like, she may be annoying, she may be a little bit spunky, but she's a good kid, even if sometimes she lets her excitement and ambition run away from her.
Right.
But she's watching him take apart and put together his lightsaber. She's having this conversation with him.
Yeah, and she's very open to what he's saying and everything he just explains. He explains, like, the emitter and the power source and the crystal.
And of course, we're eating that up
my God,
because we're like, yes, please, give me the lore.
Yeah.
Give me the lore. Teach me more.
Yeah. I think we even, like, rewound it while we were driving.
We did.
Listening to the audiobook.
We did. It was like, no, roll that back. That was really, like, we were like passive listening. We're like, wait, this is getting really cool.
Yeah.
Roll that back. This is as close to
because we were running around downtown LA at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is way more exciting than that car coming our way.
Yeah. What one-way road. We were fine. We were good.
We're fine.
So Avon's enthralled with what Imri is telling her and showing her, and I feel like it's really also helping Imri just kind of process everything, keep his mind
in the moment,
in the living force, as they say. And Avon was like, "Oh, this is so cool! Like, Vern never lets me get in on this, and she doesn't let me hold the lightsaber or see the crystal." And Imri laughs, and he's kind of like, a Jedi's lightsaber is very personal, and asking to hold it is kind of like asking someone to borrow their underclothes. And all of a sudden she was just like, oh. And it kind of clicked for her, which is kind of funny. Yeah.
But also, like, that's super deep, but not at all.
No. But it totally makes sense. Yeah.
Like, that's Imri's words of wisdom. I mean, yeah, no, it's important, but, like, you're basically asking her to hold her underwear.
Yeah. Yeah, so eventually everybody kind of wakes up from their naps and everybody feels a little bit more rested and a little less stressed out. Obviously, they're still kind of stranded on the planet, but they've had time to just sit and relax and
This book is about processing your grief.
Yes, and we love it. J6 got hilariously snippy. Honesty was brooding. Avon was kind of hangry. So, decompressed, and now everybody's hungry. And J6 is just J6, so it's fine, whatever. She has enough power to keep her through for a little while longer. But at this point, Avon's like, hey, J6, check your memory bank almanac about the moons in the system with heavy forests and acid rain to see if that narrows anything down.
Yeah, that way we can know where we are.
And that's why she's like, oh, the only thing that comes across is a moon called Rwoh. And that's where they figure everything out. And Avon's like, well, cool. So we have a name for a planet, so we know it's here. They know it's here. What's the likelihood of them flying by and picking up a signal? And J6 is like, well, very low. There aren't any real sublight routes out this way, and there's no hyperspace routes at all. So even if a ship was going to come by to get to a hyperspace route, there are no hyperspace routes. So, like, why would they go there?
So I have thoughts about the logic of that, because don't planets go in a cycle? Wouldn't it eventually? I mean, I guess it could be up here.
Yeah. Depending on, because it's a 3D map at this point. And the planets could be at a different oval shape.
And how long it takes to get there. Maybe they won't get past there for the next 300 years, and then the hyperspace lane will be near the planet for a while. They also don't know if
there's, like, a small asteroid field out in the distance. Yeah. So I get where you're going with it, but...
That's... All right. I retract my question.
Yeah. So they basically hide in the caves at night on the planet for a couple days. They will go out for a little bit and then come back at nighttime reaches. And eventually they're like, hey, we're running out of food. Or we have plenty of food with the rations that were on board the ship that we brought in with us. But we're running out of water. And so they get a little bit worried. And then in one of the mornings, Honesty and Imri are hanging out, chatting and commiserating because their fathers both just passed away.
Right.
Horribly. And they noticed that as the sun was coming up, they noticed animals were coming out. Like, oh, cool, the acid rain's gone. And they noticed a few animals could survive in there. They had fur coats that were...
Didn't go... Tss.
Yeah. That protected them. And so they noticed even more animals coming out, and they're eating these berries that weren't there the night before. And they noticed that the plants were growing kind of fast.
Oh, boy.
And that these berries basically collected the water from the ground and made them very juicy berries for the animals to eat.
And they basically are all gushers.
Basically, yeah. They're gusher berries.
Yay.
And so they're like, oh, shoot. Yeah, this is great. We can just collect these. And they're like, wait, is this toxic? So they take one over to J6 because J6 has all sorts of scanners with her. Avon's like, hey, is this toxic? And she's like, here, let me see it. And she takes it and she squishes it in her hand. She's like, no, it's fine. You can eat it. And it's like, oh, that was her scanning? All right, cool.
Freaking J6.
Yeah. Worth a quick note, before they left the ship, Avon went through, and that's where they found the rations and a few other things. But they also found a really small little scout droid that the mechanics used probably to get into little tiny places of the ship. And they were tied to a little goggle. So on the cover of the book, Avon has goggles on her forehead.
Uh-huh.
And that's for the little droid.
Oh, cool.
That'll come to play later. So at this point, Imri and Vern end up going out and exploring a little bit more. They left the others in the cave. Like, hey, we're going to go check something out real quick. And Vernestra's like, hey, how you doing? And he's like, I'm still, kind of angry and confused, but it'd be nice to know what happened and why. And she's like, yeah, definitely. We need to find what's going on because that was definitely not an accident up there.
Yeah.
And so they're walking, and then they eventually come across this ship, another mechanic kind of ship. And then they hear people talking. And it's the Nihil. And it's the people that she recognized from the ship. They somehow made it off. And they overhear them talking. And they're like, oh yeah, like, we need to go take care of the survivors because our mission was to blow up the ship. And
no survivors.
No survivors. And they're like, gasp.
I don't think that Gwishy was on the level.
No. And so Imri's like, we got to take him out right now. And
There's
Vern's
for
like,
sure not brownies coming.
No. Or decent dinner. Or even flowers at this point.
Yeah, come on.
Rude.
Anyway, so Imri is like, let's go take care of it.
Let's go take care of him. Yeah. And Vern's like,
I'm ready to be unsettled.
Yeah. And Vern's like, bro, I get it. But if we go and kill him, we won't be able to find out what their mission is, where they came from, why they did it, if there's anybody else working with them, or anything.
Do they know who the Nihil are yet?
No.
Okay, so we are still in that whole...
Yeah, in fact, they overhear them call themselves Nihil. And they're like, what's a Nihil? So they go back to the cave, and they're like, hey, we found a ship. It's damaged, but there's people that are alive. We overheard them talk, and they blew up the steady wing. And they're like, oh, no. And then they call themselves the Nihil, which is weird. I've never heard the name before. And honestly, he's like, oh, no. Because he's Dalton, he knows who the Nihil are.
Yeah.
Granted, at this point in the timeline, they're not big and all one huge storm.
Yeah, they haven't all unified under the Marchion Rwoh
Yeah, but there's enough
leadership.
Of them, small little tempests around that are wreaking havoc that he knows about. So he fills them in on like, hey, they're marauders, they're pirates. This is why the Dahlans don't like space travel.
Yeah, they're still following the rule of three, though. These are just like people who are part of Kassav's Tempest or part of Pan-Eta's Tempest or part of Lorna D's. The Weequay, who died in Light of the Jedi.
Maybe, yeah. You know what? I think it was him.
Which means some of them got absorbed and some of them sided with Pan-Eta.
Kassav's, yes.
Okay. So they're like offshoots of Kassav's Tempest. And Kassav's Tempest is not well organized, so it would make sense that he's like, yeah, hang out over by Dalna.
Yeah, but don't let the Republic in, because this is our space.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're like, okay, what do we do? And Honesty's like, justice. He wants to be Batman and take care of him, but worse than Batman and take care of him.
Yeah.
And Imri's like, yeah, that's not quite Jedi-like, and I'm on the same page, but yeah. And of course, the girls are like, no, we need to have a plan. We can't just go up in there and start causing havoc. We need to wait through the night. We'll come up with a plan. We'll go over there, and then we'll capture
murder the shit out of him.
Yeah. Yeah, so they reluctantly were like, fine, we'll stick it out tonight. We'll take care of it in the morning.
Keep our wits about us.
Uh-huh. So, of course, they didn't do that. Neither of the boys could sleep that night.
Oh,
and
no.
Imri's stewing in his own emotions.
And these are the guys that killed his dad.
Yeah, understandably.
These are the guys that killed Mr. Weft.
Yeah. So they're like, you know what? We're going to go. We're going to go take care of it. And we'll be heroes and we'll get our justice.
Yeah. And in the end, there will be nobody Weft. I'm getting a lot of mileage out of this. You can't just go doling out justice like this, Honesty. This isn't the wild, wild Weft.
So they're on their way, and it's acid rain still because it's nighttime. And Honesty's like, ow, this stuff hurts. And meanwhile, Imri is just super pissed off and doesn't even feel the pain because he's just focused. And they're about halfway there, and they end up, and of course, there's a few plants that are around that that are also protective against the acid rain. So Honesty finds one, holds it over his head, and he's kind of protected himself there, but like Imri's still walking and getting kind of burnt and acid
Dude,
burnt.
he's so burnt right now.
He's so burnt right now, bro. And he's barely even noticing because he's just on a mission.
He's in a rage.
And at this point, Honesty's like, wait, what are we doing when we get there? Like, how are we
What's
doing
our
this?
plan here?
What's our actual plan? And he's just like, maybe we really should wait with everybody else and go in the morning. And Imri's like, I don't need this honesty. I need the angry honesty. I need Honesty's anger to help us through this mission. And it was just like, whoa,
Imri.
Bro. And Imri's like, they killed your dad without any remorse. They did it out of just pure hatred of what we have going on. We need to take care of this. And Honesty's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, screw these guys.
Good honesty. Let your hate flow through you.
So at this point, they're almost to the ship. Imri goes up a little bit further, and Honesty's kind of waiting behind a rock. He's like, okay, we probably should have waited, but we're here. Let's do it. And all of a sudden, he hears a gun or blaster behind him. And then the guy was like, drop your blaster. And it turns out it was one of the Nihil, because on the way back, when Imri and Vern were on the way back to the cave, the Nihil heard them.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So, of course, the Nihil went and followed them back to the cave. They knew everybody who was in there, and they realized that they're going to come after him probably sometime in the night. So they waited for him. And the guy brings Honesty around the corner, and Imri's already passed out on the ramp because he got shot with a blaster, set to stun, and it was like, well, crap. What now?
I forgot about that.
Uh-huh. So, smash cut back to the cave, and the girls wake up in the morning, and they're like, the boys are gone. Vern's like, of course they went out. And Avon, being the smarty pants she is, she's like, oh yeah, no, that was definitely a thing. I was prepared. My little tiny droid followed him last night. I set it on sentry mode. It followed him.
Nice.
So she's like, she pulls down her goggles and is like, yep, they're at the ship. Oh yeah, they're on the ramp. They're fine. They're tied up, but they're alive. They're good.
So now
they're in
Vern to the rescue.
Mm-hmm.
J6 to the rescue.
Yeah, because again, J6 was previously a security protector droid. Her chest cavity opens up to 2 more arms and 2 blasters holding two blasters, and
she's packing.
She's ready to go.
She's packing heat.
Yeah. So she's like, let's do this. And so the 3 of them end up going
let's
down
go,
there.
meat bags.
Yeah.
Maladrat.
So they're heading down, and they get towards the ship. Vernestra uses the Force, and like Force jumps through the trees to kind of half sneak in
Crouching
there.
Tiger, hidden dragon status.
Yeah, but they're like, hey, we're coming, so we might as well just spring the trap in the best way we can. And they did. So
sick.
Yeah. So Vern's Force jumping in there. J6 is rolling in with 4 arms and like 3 or 4 blasters and is ready to go. They end up kind of fighting a bit, take out one of the Nihil, and they're getting ready to tie up the other one. And she's in front of Vern. And all of a sudden, she starts getting force choked. Imri woke up and is pissed off, made his way out of the bindings. And Vern was like, Imri, stop. This isn't good. You aren't Darksider. Like,
who's being force choked?
One of the Nihil.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought Vern was getting...
Oh, no. One of the Nihil's getting force choked by Imri. And she's like, bro, no.
And he's just like...
He's like...
I will bring peace.
Yeah. So Vern's like, and she starts feeling this Nihil, like, fade in the Force. So she force chucks Imri over the ship into the forest, like a couple hundred yards, sounds like.
Sit down, you're grounded.
Yeah. And everyone's like, what just happened? So J6 and Avon tie up the other Nihil, make sure they're good to go. J6 has like all the blasters on them, and Honesty
like holding all of their blasters against them.
Yeah.
Because she now has extra arms with extra blasters.
Yeah, exactly. And J6, Honesty, and Avon are there, hold down camp. Vern goes to find Imri. She finds him, and he is pissed off. Like, how dare you? But he's also embarrassed because he's like, I just got force thrown so far. And he knew that doing these dark side actions weren't great. So he's feeling embarrassed because of that. So he's feeling more emotions. So he's just like, hey, that wasn't cool. They need to pay. I need justice. We need justice. And she's like, I get it. And they will get it once we get them back to the Republic and the Jedi. We need to find out what is going on because they keep dropping little hints of something bigger happening. And he's like, no, I'm going to kill him. If you don't move, I will move you and I will kill you to get to him. And she was like, okay, Padawan, bring it, bro. And so he comes at her with his lightsaber, and the lightsaber is now like fully powered, bright blue. And we don't know if he tweaked it a little bit more and got everything just set right, or if he just kind of focused on his crystal a little bit more and it not really bled, but like it was more in tune with his current emotional state.
Yeah.
But Vernestra is such an amazing Jedi. She just blocked every swing that he had.
She's very good with her forms.
Dodge in and kind of tired him out.
There's a reason that Reath Silas has a little crush on Vernestra Rwoh.
Yeah.
Spoilers for ahead. Reath Silas, he's got a little crush on Vernestra Rwoh.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for it.
Yeah. He kept attacking. She was parrying. She was force pushed. Or no, he tried to force push her, and she used the force to, like, negate it. Didn't do anything. She didn't move.
Also, a rookie mistake trying to force push a Jedi. What is it? You saw Anakin and Obi-Wan do this. You just hold hands for a little while and then fly off in different directions.
Right. It's adorable. It's kind of romantic. So they fight a little bit more, and every time he tries to strike, she just dodges it like a boss.
Nice.
Eventually, she flips around behind him, flips her lightsaber to light whip mode, whips it. She barely scratches his hand, but it's a lightsaber. So he drops the lightsaber because it hurt like hell. And she was like, okay, man, you got to stop this. We can't be fighting ourselves right now. And at that point, he was like, I need to do this. And he tried reaching for the lightsaber again. So she whipped the lightsaber in half and destroyed the lightsaber. Crystal's still fine, but like 2 smoking pieces of a lightsaber.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's extra rage-filled at this point, and he's trying to reach out to the Force to do something.
You just tore up my undergarments.
Yeah. It was rude. This is the only pair he had left.
Now he literally has a pair.
Yeah. So he reaches out to the Force just to like do something, and then he kind of feels his master, and he hears him talking to him like, hey, to be a Jedi is to always trust that the Force works in mysterious ways. We try our best, but we do not forget that in the end, all is as the Force wills it. And with this, he was just like, done. All the anger fades, and he kind of comes to this realization that like, he's okay.
There's a reason you're supposed to let these feelings pass.
Yeah. So
like it's okay to feel them, but like you're not supposed to be ruled by them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's a tough lesson for a Padawan.
Yeah. Yeah. And that comes up a little bit later in the book. And at this point, he's not angry. He's not rage-filled. He's just sad and crying. And Vern's like, hey, you went through some stuff. You're okay.
You've been through the ringer, homie.
Yeah. So she consoles him and she's like, hey, your master didn't die for nothing. We will take these people back. They will find justice, and we will figure out what is going on and why they blew the ship up, and that everything's going to be okay. And then she also says, it's okay that you're angry, but you cannot give in to rage. Letting the single emotion drive actions is what leads to the dark side. And that's kind of what he was doing. And
that's a really good idea, thing. Like letting a single emotion drive your action is not okay.
Yeah.
Wise words, Vern.
Mm-hmm. She's a good one. Things calm down. They get up. They walk back to the ship. J6 tied up the Nihil with Batu knots, which was kind of cool.
Nice.
Yeah. And at this point, Avon come out and they're like, hey, Nihil tied up. J6 has them. We sent out distress signals to the Jedi, the Republic, the Senate, and the specific temples on Dalna and Port Hayleap. And then honestly, he's like, oh, and I sent one to the Dalnan capital as well. So like, all the signals are going out at this point because
someone's coming.
Someone's coming. And originally, all Vern did was set out an emergency signal. Yeah. But now things are specifically going places because the ship had a few extra bells and whistles on it. 2 days later, fresh off their mission on Sheridan, that went kind of wrong, kind of right, Skier and Keeve come to pick up the kids.
Yeah. Skier.
We love that crew. Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
So they're on their way back from the planet where, if you remember, Keeve, we talked about it earlier this episode, where Keeve went up the aggro crag and had to save a little mini bug civilization, basically.
Yeah, like little pixie people.
Yeah.
From the swarm.
Yeah, from the swarm.
Because the beacon was accidentally attracting them to the it was changing their migration patterns.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Wreaking havoc.
So has Kiev been knighted yet?
No, because they're on their way back to the Starlight Beacon when they picked up their distress signals.
Wow. So this actually happens between the panels, between the
panels and pages. Yeah.
Okay, so on the way back, they're like, "Oh, let's pick up those kids."
Yeah, and Vern knew them from before and was surprised to see Skier missing an arm.
So she doesn't know about the Battle of Kerr.
No, she does not.
Which is why they didn't know about the Nile yet.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct. And Avon was like, "What happened to that guy's arm?" And Vern's like, "Dude, shut up. Like, you can't just ask people that."
Oh my God, Avon, you can't just ask someone what happened to their arm.
And so Avon's like, "Okay, I just want to know, because Trandoshans can grow their arms back and their limbs back." And she's like, "Yeah, we know. Shut up about it."
It's a real tiny skinny thing right now.
Yeah. They get rescued, and on the way back, Imri and Honesty and Avon are just trying to, again, decompress after everything, and same with Vern. And Avon is there talking to Imri, and she's like, "Hey, well, that stuff that happened with you and Vern fighting, like, are you in trouble?" And he's like, "I wouldn't be kicked out, but I would probably have to go to a temple and repeat some training. And at this point, I don't even know if I want to do that."
I don't even know if I'm cut out to be a Jedi.
Not even that. He doesn't even know if he wants to be a Jedi anymore. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting take that he has, which will come into play a little bit later on. So, keep that in the back of your mind.
Avon asks him for something since he's not really going to be a Jedi anymore, right?
Yeah, and she's like, "Hey, what you
gonna do with these parts of your underwear here?" Because I distinctly remember that chapter, because I went back and I reread it in the other one.
Yeah, so she asked him, like, what's going on with your lightsaber? And at this point, they didn't really mention it from beforehand, but he was like, it, kind of was broken, and I don't even have the pieces anymore. Avon's like, "Oh, that's too bad. That's a bummer. Vern probably has it. I'm sure Vern has it." Thinking to herself.
Yeah.
So, of course, she sneaks off, finds Vern's bag, and finds the pieces of the lightsaber and the crystal.
Oh.
And swoops them.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. But they eventually make it to the Starlight just in time for the beacon ceremony. It all comes around.
Boom! Back to the beacon.
All comes around.
Back to the beacon.
Yeah. And afterwards, Skier finds Vern and notices she's like very uneasy and just kind of not her normal Vern self, or Vernestra as she's known to them. It's Vern. And she's like, I'm worried about Imri and everything that's happened, and
he got really ragey.
Yeah. And he's been closed off, and he locked himself away emotionally. He's not really talking to anybody. She's like, "I'm just worried about him." So Skier's like, "Well, you know what? Like, you guys bonded. Why don't you be his new master?"
Skier drops some nuggets in this in this book.
Oh yeah.
Like some of Skier's best quotes, like that are revered online when you look up like good High Republic quotes, as we happen to do.
Yeah.
Several of them come from this book alone.
Oh, yeah. Of course, she is like, "What?" Homegirl shooketh. Like, "What? I just became a knight not even a year ago. I'm 16. What am I doing training somebody?" And
okay, so Skier has been like, "You maybe want to train this boy."
Yeah. He's like, "You got this. You guys are close." And she's worried that she won't properly be able to guide him. And he's like, "Hey, it's a deliberate path to the dark side, not a series of bad days."
That's such a good quote.
Right? Yeah. There's a bigger one. I cut it down. But I was like, no, that's perfect. And he goes on to say, being a Jedi is about choosing the light over and over again. That Imri was able to find his way back to the light because of her and only her.
Yeah.
And throughout the book, little sprinkles of Vern's wiseness and her
wisdom.
Guiding Imri. Yeah. So she's like, "Yeah, you know what? I'll think about it." And she ends up going to find him, and he's in the healing gardens meditating, and he's worried he's in trouble, and he's not. And she's like, "Yeah, like, we'll take care of it. It's fine. Like, I'm going to vouch for you. But also, like, if it's not weird for you, do you want to be my Padawan?" And he's like, "What?" Also shooketh. And he happily accepts, and then boom, opens back up emotionally. And I think he was just worried about his place in the whole order, but also again, doubting himself, and even if he wants to be a Jedi and all this stuff, and her showing her confidence in him, like, really, like, did leaps and bounds for his confidence.
It's a really tough thing that I think they address really well in the High Republic of when you lose your master, what does that mean for your place in the order? Like, is it a betrayal to go with a new master who's going to take you on a whole new path, might see the Force in a very different way? Does giving up on trying to find your master mean something when maybe you should keep looking for the guy in case he's still alive? You know, and not having your mentor suddenly kind of throws well, wait a minute, he was taking me there. If I got a new mentor, do I have to start over? Like, what does that even mean? And also, like, he believed in me, and no one else tells me on a regular basis they believe in me. So it's very cool that Vern is able to, like, step up. And also, she's one of the youngest Jedi to have a Padawan, on top of being one of the youngest to be knighted in generations.
Right. And even going forward, and we'll see it in the next couple of books, Vern's never really alone, and it's almost like a Anakin Ahsoka kind of situation where she's his Padawan, but like Anakin and Ahsoka are pretty much always around other Jedi and Jedi Masters. So like Obi-Wan's always around, Yoda's always there, Plo Koon's around, and it's kind of similar here in the High Republic. Yeah, and it's similar here.
Takes a village.
Yeah, Vern's around almost everybody. Again, she's good friends with Skier. She's friends with Douglas.
There's the beacon.
There's
the temple.
They end up being stationed on the beacon for a little bit.
And because the Jedi are stationed on all these temples, like every time they go to a planet, there's other Jedi there because they're so spread throughout the galaxy. So like anytime they're on some sort of mission, they're going to wind up teaming up with another group.
You're right.
For at least a little while. And they're going to get a lot of different perspectives, which is, I think, part of the beauty of this particular version of the Jedi is that you have not only lots of different ideas, but most of the Padawans that are being trained to be Jedi are going out and seeing all the different outposts and learning about all these different ways to be Jedi out in the frontier, etc.
Yeah. And they're even learning about other Force sects. Yeah. And the way other people uses the Force, which you don't really see a whole lot during Skywalker Saga stuff.
No, but that's, Guardian protocols and stuff.
Yeah. But that's pretty much it.
So they get to the ceremony.
Yeah.
They hold their sabers in the air. They say for light and life. And that's...
We didn't even see that.
I mean, we don't even get there, but that's where they're heading.
That's where they're heading. Yeah. Yeah.
Because Skier is at the ceremony.
Yeah. And that's the end. Besides some minor Nihil stuff, they need to do some recruiting, and they get some ideas that, like, oh, Jedi have all these kids. Why can't we recruit kids?
And that does come into play.
Yeah.
That is a major factor in
a few of the books.
Mission to Disaster. That's a huge plot point in Mission to Disaster. They're like, let's just start kidnapping kids and making them Nihil.
Yeah.
And if they don't make it, they don't make it. Whatever.
Yeah.
So that is a test of courage.
Yeah.
Every time I've thought about a test of courage, I've thought about it being a test of courage for Vern, but it's kind of a test of courage for Imri too.
Big time.
Like, there's a lot. Yeah. I mean, I guess honesty and all them, that's a whole thing. But yeah.
It's good stuff. I basically reread the book because I just got into it.
Yeah. No, solid. It's solid. Cool.
Good stuff. And then, we'll see Vern pops up in a couple of the books here and the comics as well. And so does Imri. And Avon shows up a little bit later. But also we get Vernestra with the Acolyte coming out in a couple of weeks.
Yes. We'll have a whole episode for Vernestra as well.
Yeah.
Just to kind of talk about her whole overarching arc. Cool. Well, if you're still here with us, then thanks, because we still got another episode coming up after this about what happens in the rest of Wave 1, which all happens in the comics and is very focused around the Drengir and does include a little appearance from one Vernestra Rwoh and one Imri Canteros. And we've still got a couple of Starlight stories coming up, which will also include one Avon Staros, which is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
So if you liked the episode, give us a follow. If you didn't like the episode, give us a follow, and then you can hate listen to us.
Yeah.
And then make sure you follow us on Instagram, find us on Threads, where we talk about all things High Republic and gush about it with other High Republic girlies out in the world. So without further ado, in the words of Charles Soule from Light of the Jedi, as we are finishing the third novel here in this Wave 1, being a Jedi was not about saving oneself. It was about saving others. The Starlight Archive is brought to you by Bryce Rankins and Brian Romero. It was edited by Bryce Rankins and Brian Romero. Bryce Rankins designed the logo. Brian Romero did most of the research. It's produced by Bryce Rankins and Brian Romero, and basically it's just us. The Starlight Archive is brought to you by Sneaky Geek Media 2024. All rights reserved.